Welcome to part 2 of this interview with Guy Tsakalakis.
Hey, everybody, we're back with the Near Memo. Mike Blumenthal, me, Greg Sterling, and today, Guy Tsakalakis, founder and president of Attorneys Inc., which is a legal-specific digital marketing firm, and also a partner of Near Media in our legal program. So let's talk about AI, which is obviously a big topic.
Let's talk about AI.
Let's talk about AI.
Big topic.
Everybody wants to talk about it anyway.
Well, it's a big topic. So what are your clients saying to you about being found on ChatGPT or Gemini or other sites? And what do you tell them about the importance of paying attention to that?
Take a guess what they're asking. No, they're
how can I be found?
I want to be best attorney in
ChatGPT.
Albuquerque on ChatGPT. That's what they're asking.
How did you guys know? Yes. Get me to rank. How do you get me to rank in ChatGPT is the number one question. And we take a very unpopular view on this because I know a lot of our worthy rivals are doubling down on GEO optimization, all this stuff. And like, we'll get you ranked. AEO. And I'm like, at best, you're misleading if you're not flat out lying or trying, some Hanlon's razor, perhaps it's incompetence and not malice. But there's a fundamental misunderstanding about how these technologies work and how users are actually adopting them in the context, particularly of bottom of the funnel lawyer lookup searches. And don't get me wrong, I will be the first to say that we are seeing ChatGPT showing up in qualitative attribution data, self-reported qualitative attribution data. So how did you hear about us? I found you on ChatGPT. It's starting to happen. There's no question about it. We are seeing referral traffic from ChatGPT converting into clients for law firms. But if you look at the percentage of our clients' business coming from ChatGPT, especially in the context of non-brand, lower bottom of the funnel lookups, it's tiny compared to what's going on at Google. And so first, we come in with a very consultative approach to SEO in general. Like, I can't guarantee you're going to rank. These are the things that we believe will help you do that. And we're going to help you do those things. And this is how we're going to define success. And these are going to be the leading indicators of success. ChatGPT and AI, throw that all out the window. We don't have Search Console data. We don't have Google Analytics data. You can go sign up for Profound and these people that are trying to track. This is all gobbledygook, made up nonsense. No offense to them, like they're trying. And some people will say, well, some data is better than none. But there's zero foundation for these prompt trackers. There's a ton of personalization. And because it's a probabilistic technology, just by its very nature, you do 100 prompts, for certain queries, you're going to get a ton of variation. Not to mention that even if you're starting to say like, hey, because we can get into the things like, well, what are you actually doing to try to improve your visibility there? Which there are things you can do. But even if you do, there's no promise that the tool's even going to get the information right. I mean, how many times have I seen like our brand will show, the brand that we're working on will show up, it'll be the wrong phone number, it'll be the wrong address. And so I'm very much like, if you're coming to hire Attorneys Inc. to rank you in ChatGPT, go talk to these worthy rivals who are selling this because I want no part of that.
The other part of this should become evident to everybody. This week, Google announced that Discover relies on their search index to highlight news, right?
So does ChatGPT, by the way.
So does ChatGPT. So does AI Mode. So all of these things are grounded in local SEO and organic SEO, knowledge graph, web graph. And so the best you can do is what you've always done to influence those things. It's
100%.
Two quick responses to that. There are some things that are different about appearing. There are some things that are different about appearing than local SEO, right? People in local SEO tend to focus predominantly on Google to the exclusion of other.
Well, that has been their failing though for years. I mean, this is not a new blind spot. This is an old blind spot. But if you go into AI mode and you do a complicated restaurant query now, you say unique cocktail lounges and dinner places in Toronto. And it says to you, do you want me to find booking for you? And you click yes. It'll list out 415 search results that came from 15 queries that it looked at. And as you go and you scan those, what you see are GBP references, website references, TripAdvisor references, Yelp references, list references in Toronto. You see the same stuff that Google has always used to rank local, but now they're doing 15 queries instead of one query, aggregating all that and using reviews and all the other references to come up with an answer and to show you who has available slots tonight.
The other thing I would say is that I think the consumer behavior is evolving, and it's still not entirely understood. So there's a lot of last click attribution. Right? Oh, ChatGPT is 1%. Everything is coming from Google. But at least what's happening, it's not clear and legal. I mean, our research showed that ChatGPT was not being widely used by people looking for lawyers. But in our surveys, those are very bottom of the funnel cases. But I think that what you see in some situations like product search, B2B, certainly, and others, is that people are using ChatGPT as a way to understand who's out there and also do some kind of comparisons and some follow-ups, right? Does this one have this feature, or is this one, whatever the buying criteria are. And then they're going to go to Google. They're going to go to Google to look up reviews. They're going to go to Google to get the phone number. They're going to go to Google to get directions because Google is much more trusted, and local in particular. But ChatGPT is in the mix in the background there in some of these cases. It's not true across the board, but certainly in some of these cases. And there was some research on B2B, like software buying, was showing that AI was now on par with, this is a survey, so you could discount it if you want. And where's Rand Fishkin to say that all surveys are garbage? That was showing that AI was now at par with or exceeding search in terms of people's reliance on it in a B2B software buying context. If that's true, the reason for that is because you can ask a bunch of questions. Compare this one and this one. Does this one have this feature? Does this one work for small businesses? You can't do that on Google. You could do it in AI mode.
You can do it in AI mode. And in fact,
can't.
that's why in AI mode, one of the things is those little check boxes, so you can check the two different businesses and then do a follow-up prompt to compare specific options. Google knows that's a huge use case.
Right. And Google, go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's just that that little box isn't very visible. I find it interesting, but it is very useful because not only can you compare and contrast, you can ask anything about individual or collective group of businesses.
Yes.
So it really turns this knowledge graph into an AI result in a very, very powerful way that speaks to the fact that they're leveraging all their old technology to win at the new game. A totally different conversation, but it just is like, oh my God, here it goes again, right?
Yeah, that's a whole different discussion about but it's how Google's,
it's both amazing technology and an amazing abuse of power.
The distribution is the big problem, but go ahead, Guy.
Well, so I was going to respond to Greg, what you were talking about, because we do see the same thing in two points here. So first, as you mentioned, the research that we've partnered with you guys on, two things in this context. First, it shows people are turning to ChatGPT and AI tools for answers about their case, right? Like, hey, this happened to me, like, what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. Not for the bottom of the funnel lawyer lookups. But to your point, what we do see is even firms that have not historically had an established brand presence, so they're not doing a lot of offline, they don't have big brand recognition. When those firms are showing up in ChatGPT responses, we're seeing an uptick in brand queries on search and Search Console. And that's to your point. We are seeing that where, hey, it's like all of a sudden we'll have clients where like all of a sudden their brand queries are going up and we're like, are you guys doing brand campaigns? And they're like, no. And our suspicion is that that's because of the behavior you're talking about, searching on, the conversations on ChatGPT and then going back to Google and searching specifically on the firm name.
I mean, and if Google succeeds in sort of reclaiming all that usage through AI mode or whatever combination of interfaces, then there'll be the discovery on AI mode and then the brand queries for all the sort of Google local stuff. So let's sort of close, because we could talk about a ton of these things. We've just scratched the surface on many of these topics, and we'll obviously continue the conversation. But what tweaks are you going to make in 2026 to your whole approach to this market? I mean, even if we put aside ChatGPT, the Google SERP is totally in flux. People are speculating Q1 of next year, we're going to see some big change. AI mode is going to be the new SERP. And we can have a discussion about that. But how are you dealing with the fluidity of the market, and what changes do you think you need to make in your approach to clients and local marketing in 2026?
Totally. So the first one I want to address is because people are like, are you tactically changing anything that you're doing with AI? And I would say the biggest one that we keep coming back to is this reprioritization of directories. Like, for a long time ago, we were like NAP consistency. And so we're like directories, and we spent a lot of time on directories. And then that kind of went away. We weren't as concerned about the citations. And now, because to the point, like we see that and I'm going to use this term loosely because I don't even think this is technically what's going on, but the source links, the source information that is in a lot of these results is heavily, especially in legal, it's heavily legally directory driven, super lawyers, a lot of the fine laws, the directories. And so we're reprioritizing directories, especially the vertical specific legal directories. There are some things that we're conscientious of in content because these AIs, they're not as smart. Like everybody wants to say there's like general intelligence. They're not that smart. You need to actually say like the whole thing. Like they're not picking up on context. If you're using blanking on the word, but there's all sorts of things in language that you need to be more literal about in order for the GPT to really like get that it should be associating you with that. And then the third thing,
triplets, is that what you're looking for? This, that, and the
yeah,
other
stuff
thing?
like that. There's a couple other examples of that where you have to be more literal about what you're actually, when you're describing stuff on your site, in my opinion. Which again, from a user standpoint, is not as good because it's like you're dumbing down the language that you're using, and not dumbing down in a more accessible way, but dumbing down in a longer form way of saying stuff. Because again, it's just like the way that it seems to be working. But anyway, not a huge tweak on that, like some minor tweaks. And then the other thing is, like, to Mike's point, is it's reprioritizing a lot of the stuff that's like in the past, like being listed on best list wasn't really a thing, and that's back. And I'll even say in our space, Conrad and I, who's our other partner in the legal program with Near at Mockingbird, just because we do a podcast as well, and we were just laughing about this. All of our competitors are creating these best law firm SEO company lists on their sites, and we're grateful that we're being included. But guess what? It's working. And so from our standpoint, for now, right, exactly. So anyway, that was my tactical conversation. But strategically, what we're saying is when you're in a world of uncertainty and flux, the solution is to diversify. If you have all of your eggs in the local SEO bucket, you should have changed this a long time ago. This isn't a new problem, but now it's even more important because you're not going to be able to rely on the local pack and those traditional local results. And so every conversation I have is, let's look at your entire marketing budget and let's look at resource deployment across performance, brand building, channels, and make sure that you're not 80% on Google in a place where even historically you've been wrong to do that, but even more so now, and you should be diversifying your approach.
The metaphor in a way is investing, right? I mean, if you have a diversified portfolio, you're hedging against any kind of market. That's just a sort of a smart thing to do.
As you pointed out earlier, it's investing tactically in the context of a brand strategy that positions you for the long haul as a sophisticated, caring local player.
Exactly.
And
it's the multi-channel approach to that, right? It's one thing in legal in particular, but I think small business in general is invest in email. You opted an email list that people actually want to get messaging from you. And then you can use that for custom audiences on social. And if you get a large enough audience, you can do that on search too. It's a game changer.
I want to ask more questions, but I'm mindful of the time. There's just a ton of stuff that's really fascinating. Legal in particular has a ready answer to the brand question. It's this offline stuff. It's TV, it's radio, it's outdoor. Other small business categories don't have that same, just add water. Money is a variable, right? You have to be able to afford that. But in our research, people that were known, I mean, it was really striking, and it doesn't exist equally in other categories. But when we were watching people search for lawyers in our user testing, people who knew a brand, knew a law firm, would call that out. They were scrolling and scrolling, trying to make a decision, look at all the reviews that are clustered around the same volumes and ratings. And they would say, oh, I've heard of these guys. Oh, I know this person, or I've seen their ads. And that just really popped. And it just showed the relationship between awareness and the way people interact with the search results. And this is something that's been discussed for years. People choose brands, they choose what they're familiar with. People buy Heinz ketchup versus the generic brand, depending on the price, because
brand
it's familiar.
Sorts out the cesspool.
Well, right. That's the Eric Schmidt comment. And it doesn't always work.
Other than his
commercial
cesspool, I mean, other than the guy who creates his own cesspool, Eric Schmidt.
that's a different conversation altogether.
That is a totally different conversation, but he's not somebody who I listen
Talking
to
about
for
cesspools.
ethical values.
It's
all.
a good
That's all
quote,
I'm
though.
saying.
It's a good quote.
It is a great quote from a total schmuck.
Well, but it illustrates something deeper, is that there's just an enormous cognitive, this is something that people don't talk about a lot. There's an enormous cognitive load involved in using Google, traditional Google, like trying to sort through stuff, click back and forth, figure things out, parse what's self-promotional, what's genuine information. This is one of the attractions of AI, is that we can say the underlying information is accurate, inaccurate, or whatever, but the user experience is just so much more efficient than using traditional Google. And I think
And the way Google is handling this has implications, though, too, because as Jess Schultz pointed out in several previous conversations with her, Google is trimming their index significantly and focusing on more prominent, as is ChatGPT, more prominent, more valued directories. It's not Merchant Circle or whatever those guys were called. It's not that directory. It's Avo and it's super lawyers, right? And Google is doing the same thing. When you look at the results that they surfaced in their AI mode, it's a pretty limited group of Google local plays a big role, but it's Yelp and it's TripAdvisor and it's local.
It's like five or six directories, depending on the vertical, maybe,
right.
Not even.
And it's a pretty limited subset. And so I think, interestingly, AI mode is a great diagnostic tool to understand where Google is looking for its answers and where you should be focusing these efforts.
I want to remind you, Mike, of our conversation with you and David and me. This is now maybe a couple of years ago, maybe not quite that long, before sort of all the AI frenzy kicked in. We were talking about this issue of cognitive load and SERP clutter and the UI sort of issues. And I was saying, I mean, I'm not trying to be self-congratulatory here, but maybe a little bit.
You can take the stage. It's okay. I'll
support
support you.
No, what I was arguing for was the return of the Yahoo directory. I was saying now is the time when something like that would work again, because people don't need 100 billion listings. What they need is just a handful of high quality, that was all human curated at some point. High quality.
It's why the
results.
Wirecutter used to be good, but it is no longer.
Because they're trying to do
they
too
used
many
to human
things.
curate very carefully, and now it's
they
the
sold
same crap as every place else, So, but
well, I mean, it purports to still be human curated. But anyway, this was my point, is that Google overtook Yahoo at a time when the web was growing exponentially, and Google was a great tool to make it simple. And there's now so much crap out there. What we need is just a few trusted sources of information that are going to give us an answer that genuinely help us. And that's sort of where we've come back to in a certain way. We can debate whether the underlying material is, good enough or not.
Well, that's why, to me, again, all of this is about trust. And we talk about this for our own company. We talk about this for our clients. But when you're inundated and everybody is churning out this slop, the behavior is going to change because the trust is going to be eroded. People are going to get burned. They're going to, whether it's because they call and it's the wrong number, or they get a service and it's a bad service, or there starts to be more of a realization that all these reviews are fake. People are going to start to turn to their trusted sources, and we're already seeing that. And I see it with our clients that have already started going down this road, and they're educating their local communities, and they're putting that information on social about the problems with reviews and the problems with they're becoming a trusted source, and that is the cure. Like, trust is the cure.
Trust and brand are the same thing, right? I mean, the core of brand affinity, loyalty, to some degree. I mean, in consumer product goods, it's maybe price and performance or something, but it's trust. Ultimately, trust is the thing. And I had a plumber come and install a faucet this last week, and if he's available in the future and he survives, I'll just come back directly to this guy, right? Because I don't need to go through the nonsense of looking for it and evaluating the reviews and all that stuff. It's like
And that guy should be sending you regular messaging, checking in with you, maybe depending on what you opt into and how you prefer to be communicated with, maybe a text, because
he's not going to do that. He's just a random guy. He's not going to do that.
I know. That's to me, that's because what happens then, you're top of mind with him because he's nurturing that relationship with you. And then so when you have a friend who's like, I got a plumbing problem, and they're like, oh, you got to
Totally.
call this guy.
The word of mouth is the sort of secondary effect that is the result of all of this.
And then that word of mouth can be nurtured and can be grown, because that's the other
Yes.
thing people forget is like, you're not sitting there thinking about your plumber every day. But if he pops up in your inbox and he pops up in your social feeds and he pops up in a helpful way, not advertising to you, but in a helpful way, you're going to be top of mind and you're more likely to refer.
All right. So next year, if we do this at the same time, what are we going to be talking about? Same stuff or anything different?
I think a lot of the same stuff. I maybe have a difference of opinion on this. I think that this year we're going to see the real coming of the switch. I don't know if it's a full switch. I don't know if the default experience is AI mode, but I think that you're going to see by the end of 26 for the queries that we play in a much different experience on Google. And so it's going to be a lot of these same themes. I think there's a lot of people that are still kind of waiting on the side, like kind of like, well, you say this and maybe that happened and maybe you have to click a tab into AI mode, but we're still seeing a lot of volume of business from LSAs and local packs. And I think that's going to be a much bigger conversation a year from now.
Well, before Google does any radical UI change, they've got to figure out the ads thing. That's
100%.
That is the gatekeeping factor, sort of preventing them from radically overhauling the SERP. Once they figure that out,
they met with advertisers this week and said 2026 is when they're going to have ads in AI mode. They explicitly said.
Well, did they say that because they didn't they walk that back because someone announced that and they said no, we're not doing that.
Gemini, I think.
Gemini, right.
Yeah, so they've got ads in AI mode. They're showing them.
Yeah,
but their current ads in AI mode are not going to do anything for them because they're at the bottom. They're not particularly interesting. They're going to have to create new ad units or place them differently. They're going to have ads every friggin' place they can put ads, and the ads are privileged. But until they figure out ads, which they're working on, I'm sure, 24/7, they're not going to make any radical changes. They're making incremental changes to the SERP, but you won't see any switch over to AI mode until that ads piece is figured out.
Can't upset the golden goose.
Do you see AI mode, or at least what we're seeing across AI mode and other surfaces, is this agentic capability? Oh, let me call 5 places for you. Or let me show you where reservations are available and let me help you book one, or whatever the transactional nature of it is. It strikes me that 2026, we're going to see much more transactional capacity and rolled out, more visible.
100%.
I think that's totally right.
Even think about in the current AI overviews, and I've seen this. I don't know what the current state of it is, but we've seen surfaces in AI overviews where the generative experience will prompt you to say which of these factors is actually the most important to you in your hiring decision. And when you respond to that, it gives you firms that, for whatever reason, the generative thinks that they appeal to that thing.
I think, Mike, this is the big shift that we're going to see. I mean, think about the Yelp RFP or RFQ process, right? Think about restaurant reservations. We're going to see a lot more of that incorporated into the search experience. It may not be entirely automated. I think one of the Alexa Plus demonstrations incorporated Thumbtack. So when they were starting to roll out their enhanced version of Alexa, they showed, you can book a service business, whatever, home services vendor, by just making this voice inquiry and then giving them some criteria and available times, and they'll book 3 for you, or whatever it is. And we've seen in LSAs this sort of Yelp approach to, you're interested in this one? How about these others too? So I could imagine very easily saying, I need to, have bids from 3 plumbers for this kind of work, and show me only people who have 4.5 stars or above, and something like that looks like a lead gen request for, quote, get much more deeply integrated into the Google local main SERP experience, for sure.
And I think that for sure that it's going to be, it's already kind of happening in the LSA experience, where it's like they'll prompt you like, hey, would you like to be contacted by 3 other law firms. And I think that you're going to see more generative interaction. But I totally agree with you. They're not going to risk the ad revenue. And not to mention the other thing that keep coming up, because people are like, well, ChatGPT and OpenAI, it's like the first real competition. These companies are hemorrhaging money. I mean, I don't know at what point, and I'm not sophisticated enough to know, and I know that the VC community is, pushing their messaging, but this can't go on forever. Like, they're going to have ads. They're not closing the gap on revenue on a $20 a month subscription.
Said ChatGPT just hired the Slack CEO as their chief revenue officer. So they're now starting to really get serious about this. They've got Fiji Simo, who's the CEO. She's an ads person from Facebook, CEO of Instacart. Sarah Fryer, CFO, has talked about it. Sam Altman is talking about it in a more conciliatory way. 100% they're going to have ads.
And I can't wait to see the analytics on that stuff, because if you're going to have ads, you're going to have to show things like impressions and clicks and something.
Well, I think that ChatGPT's approach to shopping is to try and do e-commerce, right? It remains to be seen whether they successfully do that, but they want a piece of a transaction. They could take the Yelp model in local and do lead gen, right? So who are the 3 that I'm interested in talking to, and some sort of lead gen, there's your analytics. It's not just impression based. It's something much more tangible.
If I'm an advertiser, though, I'm going to want to have some control and some kind of metrics beyond just like, send me some leads, because you're going to be like, I'm getting unqualified leads and I have no dials to move to be able to say, I don't want to appear for these prompts.
Yeah, I see it as a tough row for them to hoe, as well as Google. If Google is given carte blanche ability to integrate all of their tools, all of their knowledge graphs, all of their surfaces in battle, it's going to be good luck, right? Particularly when you're hemorrhaging money and Google is generating money.
I mean, exactly. I've been, since this all started and people are like, oh, Google's dead and SEO's dead and everybody's on ChatGPT. And I'm like, don't count Google out, folks. Like, you might hate them, but just based on the data they've got, they've been doing it longer.
Well, they've already crossed that threshold. People who are saying, well, ChatGPT is taking over, that's completely wrong. Right. That's already been proven. They've recovered very quickly. I mean, they went through this with mobile. Steve Jobs, people don't search on mobile devices; they use apps. They did that incredible pivot in mobile and totally recovered. And this was even faster, arguably. And even though ChatGPT still has the dominant market share, where it counts, Google is the leader.
Yeah, and
at the Department of War, where they just installed Gemini.
Yeah. Mike, you need a new podcast, man.
I don't.
Really. That's what we'll call it. We'll call it the Department of War, and then we can just talk about all the stuff that would get us thrown in jail.
Totally.
I can deal with jail. You're too young. You guys are too young. You guys have families. My kids are all independent.
I'm not that. I'm not that young.
I'm fine with it.
I'm not that young anymore. All right, so we could go on and on and on and on and on, and we will do this another time. But thank you, Guy, for your wisdom and insights and your sense of humor. This is stuff we'll be talking about throughout. All of these are by no means decided. And the thing that you point out, which I think is true, is there's no magic bullet. There's no silver bullet. It's just a lot of hard work, a lot of test and learn. We didn't even talk about understanding consumer behavior. That's for another time. People have to know.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's research. That's why sign up for the legal program, because the research is what it validates a lot of things for you. And it also opens your eyes to things.
There are also surprises.
That's right. And that's the thing is that a lot of the headlines out there, a lot of the conventional wisdom, because of the changes that are going on, it's not what you think, folks. Do the research, invest in the research, especially for your audiences. It makes a huge difference, and directionally, it impacts every strategic decision that you make.
Thank you for that endorsement.
There's my pitch. Yeah, there's my pitch.
All right. Okay, well, join us next week. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to see you.
Yep.